Hello, everybody, and welcome, and happy International Women's Day. This is another edition of our Moving Forward series, and I'm JJ Mccrory, the Dean of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies at York University. Thank you again so much for joining us on this important day. A special welcome also to our guest panelists, and a thank you to our host, Michelle Johnson. You'll be hearing from them shortly. I'd now like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we are on. This meeting is, of course, virtual, and because of that, we're not all actually gathered in the same space. York's land acknowledgement might not represent the territory you are currently on, and I would ask, if this is the case, that each of you take the responsibility to acknowledge the traditional territory that you are on and its current treaty holders. I myself am situated in the area known as Takaranto, and I gratefully acknowledge my presence on this territory, which is the same as York University. As a member of the York University community, I recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. So welcome again to our guests and to everybody joining us on Zoom to the next chapter in the Moving Forward series. During this panel, we will hear from 6 women graduates of the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies who are currently in leadership roles. We look forward to hearing about their career journeys and their paths to success. If at any time you need help with this experience or have questions for the panelists about the content, please feel free to click on the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. Our team is here and ready to help you. So that's all from me. I'd like to hand things over now to the fabulous Associate Dean, Michelle Johnson, who will introduce our guests. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Dean Mccrory. Thank you. And welcome, as the Dean said, to the continuation of our Moving Forward series. And today we are so thrilled to be able to welcome 6 of our fabulous graduates from LANPS. Today is International Women's Day, and happy International Women's Day. And in keeping with that theme, we're going to be hearing, as Dean Mccrory said, from 6 of our graduates. I'm going to ask our 6 guests to introduce themselves as I call them out. They will turn their cameras on and let you see their beautiful faces. So starting off with Carolyn Clark.
Oh, I need to start video. Okay, there we go. Thanks so much, Michelle, and good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to be on the panel today, which I'm really looking forward to, and would like to also wish everyone happy International Women's Day. I graduated from York with a degree in sociology and really enjoyed my time there. My career actually began as a summer student at the Banff Springs Hotel in the Canadian Rockies. This ignited my passion for the hospitality industry. And after I graduated, it led to a lifetime career as head of human resources for Fairmont Hotels, now known as Accor. I'm looking forward to our discussion today and to sharing my insights with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Our second guest today is Diane Flanagan. Diane.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Happy International Women's Day. I wanted to share a bit of my career path. It was a non-linear one, including my graduation at York in BA in sociology as well. Looking forward to telling you about experience in politics, in infrastructure, banking, and insurance. And happy to hear and celebrate International Women's Day with all of these great women and hear from the students as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Diane. And our third guest to introduce herself is Laura Canon.
Hi, everyone. I just want to thank you so much for having me here today. I just felt like yesterday I was literally walking through the halls of Very Hall, hanging out in the student center, or like spending my late Friday nights in the library studying. So this is like a full circle moment for me. I'm really honored to be a part of this today. I'm Laura Canoni, as you guys know, and I am from Glamagal Kids Spa. I'm a franchisor, and I am the CEO as well of the GG Media Group. So I'm really hopeful that I could help you guys today with some guidance, some advice, and really celebrate International Women's Day.
Okay, thank you so much, Laura. Our next guest is Nimi Nanji Nimard.
Oh, here I am. Hello, and thank you for having me on the panel. Happy International Women's Day, everybody. I'm going to echo what Diane Flanagan said earlier. A very non-linear career. I graduated with a bachelor's in social work from York 35 odd years ago. And I started as a social worker, but soon became a fundraiser. And, you know, one would wonder what one has to do with other, but I look forward to telling you about the transferable skills that come out of a career choice from social work. Today, I am a Montreal-based luxury scarf designer, and my designs tell stories, and I look forward to telling you more about what I do now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nimi. And our fifth guest today is Tina Powell.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tina Powell, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of the panel. My background is that I have a Bachelor of Commerce from York University, and that is the foundation upon which my entire career has been built. I later went on and got an English degree from MAC, as well as a Master's of Communication Management from USC. And I used all of that to become a children's author, a journalist, a communications specialist, and most recently, a women's rights advocate with the Zonta Club of Oakville. So happy International Women's Day and happy Zonta Rose Day. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Tina. And our sixth guest is Erin Ellofson. I hope I said that right, Erin.
Hi, I think the host stopped my video, but okay, start my video. Okay, hi. I'm Erin. I lead Pinterest in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. I have had a long career in tech, starting at Microsoft, then Facebook, and now here at Pinterest. And I was really fortunate to do a graduate degree at York when I was actually working full-time at Microsoft. And so it holds a fond place in my heart. And that's what I do. I'm primarily in the advertising business, which means I'm primarily in sales, and I lead large organizations who work with companies who figure out how they can make the best of Pinterest to help build their business.
Oh, okay, thank you so much, Erin. So I hope you're all duly impressed. This is LANPS at its best. Our 6 graduates are just shining examples of leadership. They have gone through all kinds of paths to their success, and they will weave those stories in as we go through our questions. So we have 3 prepared questions, and then we will go to questions from the audience. So we'll start off with our first question, and all our panelists will respond. So here is our question. How do you think your experiences as a student in LANPS, for some of you it was Arts and Atkinson before, How do you think these experiences as a student assisted you in the development of leadership and other skills in your career? And I'll just go around the room. Let me start with Carolyn. You're on mute, Carolyn.
My experiences at York really played a strong role in the development of my career. And when I think about it, when you build a house, you have to build a strong foundation. And my, as I said, my time at York really helped me to build that strong foundation to launch my career. When I went to York, I lived at home, so I didn't have the opportunity to enjoy the residence experience and make connections in the residence. So in my first year, I laid kind of low and learned all about what was available. And then in my second year, I was determined to become involved on campus. So I joined student council, and that really helped me to champion student initiatives and broaden my network on campus. And then in my third year, I decided to apply for the Director of Communications role on Student Council. And that was an election platform. So I had to develop a platform for this role. And that really helped me to shape my communication skills, collaboration, and public relations skills, which was invaluable. So my degree was certainly very important and later helped me as a springboard into my career. And also I want to say that a liberal arts degree at York really helps to shape and broaden your career exposure, and is certainly not as linear, say, as a law degree. So it was, yeah, can't say enough about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. And for our students listening in, I hope you're taking notes. This is the time when you can acquire some important skills in leadership. Diane?
Yeah, I had as I said earlier, a bit of a non-linear experience. And to be honest, I struggled in my first couple of years at York. I was working part-time and trying to balance studies and work. And I decided that I needed to take a bit of a break and work for a year. And then I came back and finished my degree part-time. It took me over 10 years, just over 10 years to get my degree. But I think it made me appreciate it even more. I really enjoyed my time as part of the Atkinson College. I found the professors were, understood that a lot of us were balancing work and life issues. And I think as I worked more, I was able to understand the connection between what I was learning, how it helped my worldview, opened up my eyes, and it also gave me great confidence. And I think that really helped me leap forward, because if I could juggle all these things, finish my degree part-time and still get there, I knew at that point I could do a lot of other things too. And so in some ways it felt long and painful, and in other ways it really empowered me in a different kind of way. So it was an excellent experience.
Thanks, Diane. Really important, because sometimes when our students take a bit longer than people might expect, they get nervous, they feel sad, but you are a great example that the straight way is not necessarily the only way, not at all. Thanks so much for that. And Laura.
So I would have to say, similar to what Carolyn said about the foundation. York provided me a foundation that I never really knew I even needed, but it gave me the strength to go to the next level. And I'm going to give you guys an example. I literally out of high school this summer going into York University for the first year, I remember going into the bookstore and there was like lists per course of what you needed, the books that you needed per course. And I was like totally taken back, like, how can I do this? I was like, I don't think I'm meant to go to university. This isn't for me. I doubted myself. I remember like in the first, 3 months getting, taking a psychology exam and getting like the worst mark. And I was so hard on myself for it. And then I remembered thinking, do I quit or do I fight harder for this? And I chose to fight hard. And, my marks in my first year were not the best marks that I was used to in high school, but I was determined and I was passionate. And I think that skill was taught from that first year at York University to not give up, to keep going. And, some of the courses I took my background is my sociology degree. I have a sociology degree from York, was to question things, look at things through different lenses, be observant of various situations, be methodical. So these skills, I think launched me, I know launched me into who I am today, into my career, and gave me what I needed to be who I am right now. So I just want you guys to look at things as like, don't give up. It does look hard, but if you just keep going and you just keep fighting for what you want, you'll get it. You just got to fight for it. That's my personal experience to share with you guys.
Thanks, Laura. I wish we could take you around to every class to just make this lesson of fighting, of keeping on. And the story that you just told about that transition from high school into first year, many first years feel overwhelmed, and this is a great lesson. Keep fighting, keep trying. Thank you so much. Tina.
All right, I'm here. Well, in addition to having the BCom at York, it really ignited my passion for lifelong learning. So I'm grateful for that. But I'm also grateful because of what I studied and that I learned through these courses in the BCom program that everything is a business. No matter if you're selling books or scarves like Nimi is, or your ideas, you need to be able to market yourself and be able to sell what you are putting forth to the world. And a good example I have is when I signed up with my first publisher, very small boutique firm. It was wonderful. However, they didn't have the financial and business acumen to actually make a go of it and ended up going out of business. So they sold their list and me with it to a large Canadian publisher, which I thought was fantastic then because we had the resources we needed to really market my books and move on. Well, they went out of business as well. And I kind of thought, well, I have a degree from York in business. I can drive a business into the ground as well as the next guy. So I started my own publishing company. I never would have been able to do that without my BCom from York. And then I went on and I had a good time with it. And I ended up selling over 600,000 books. And also it's because of that experience at York that I was able to do my 9/11 book that I did for after the aftermath of the 9/11. It was a children's book, The Terrorist Attacks. And it was a beautiful book that we did with Mad Marketing and Design. And this book then went on to raise $60,000 for the Red Cross and is now in the New York Museum. All of that happened because of the foundation that I got as a business person to be able to secure these blue chip sponsors from York. So my advice to you is to always be passionate about lifelong learning. And if you get opportunity, please go and get some business skills. Go and sign up for some business courses, social media courses, whatever. Be able to market yourself to the world. Thank you.
Wow, Tina, seriously. I need to give you my CV and we'll talk after. Okay, we'll talk. Thank you so much for that. Erin.
Yeah, well, it's a super interesting question for me about how the relationship between the work I did at York and what I do today. I originally wanted to be a journalist, and it's a kind of a long story, but I was supposed to go to the University of Regina for journalism and was withdrawn at the last minute due to screwing up a prerequisite, and it changed the course of my life. And so in my undergraduate, I went to the University of Calgary and did a communications degree, then went on to have this career in tech, and felt like going to York to do the MA in communication with a specialization in technology and practice, that this might allow me to go back to those roots, that dream that was never met. But ultimately what it did is it allowed me to combine the practical experience I already had, working at Microsoft, working in the technology field. And at that time I was in a master's program that really nobody was working really. It was just really highly intelligent graduate students that were very intimidating. And I brought to it a practicality and ended up writing a thesis that I still draw upon to some degree today. And it makes me a more intellectual tech leader than I would have been. I often also tell people it was hard. It was a really challenging program. The texts were very hard to read and consume, and I often felt very intimidated. But just the sheer perseverance of getting through that while I was working full time in and of itself really instilled some confidence in me. And so for me, it was some combination of making my brain work in different ways, to figuring out how to apply that to a professional path I was already on, and just being more confident. It wasn't a social experience. I felt really like nobody could relate to me and I couldn't relate to them. I wasn't as academic as that group. I was older and all the rest, but it was a really, really enriching intellectual experience for me.
Thank you, Erin. A large proportion of our students, those listening in today, are also working. A large proportion of our students work part-time, full-time, and are trying to do exactly what you're talking about, which is to balance that work life with school life and trying to figure it all out. And the word to take from all of you today is keep pressing on. It will come together. Keep going. Thank you so much. And Nimi.
Okay, here I am. I went in, a bit like Erin, I went in as what they used to call an adult student. So, and thank you for the plug, Tina, for it's all about business. Even if I'm designing scarves, at the end of the day, yes, it's artistic, but it's also, and I'm sure Erin would agree too, that it is about business. It comes down to sales. My experience at York was a bit different from what the stories we've heard. I went in my mid-30s. I was going through a divorce. One of the things that I had discovered in career planning was that I would enjoy studying social work and I could make a contribution. Social work in and by itself is a context in which it's a helping profession. So for me, it gave me much more social awareness. It gave me an appreciation of mental health issues and just in general, what people go through in their day-to-day lives. Many of us don't live the challenges or know of the challenges, but it always in all our lives today comes down to what challenge are you facing and to have the coping mechanisms and the ability to seek out resources. And this is what York taught me, what was to seek out resources, whether it was for myself or for somebody else. So, and the environment. I mean, today we talk a lot about diversity. On those days, 35 years ago, we talked maybe a little less, but boy, was it a reflection of the society that we were already all living in. So it was time for me to be sensitized about the environment, the privilege, the less privilege, at the same time leaving with the academic and the technical skills that built the rest of my career. And even if I never practiced social work again, it had equipped me to negotiate whatever came my way and gave me the ability to help back. So that's what York did for me.
Thank you so much, Nimi. I mean, there are two phrases that will follow us out of 2020 and 2021. One is you're on mute. The second one is to pivot. And this is what I'm hearing from everyone. York gives us this environment in which people can learn how to change, how to pivot, to really pivot, to change life course if necessary. Thank you so much for those responses. And we're going to move on to our second question. what might you identify as some of the challenges and opportunities that you have encountered as a woman in leadership, and how have you addressed them? So now we're getting into it, the challenges and the opportunities. And I'll go in a slightly different order this time, starting this time with Laura. It's like in your tutorial, I'm calling on you first.
Yeah, and I'm putting my head down. I'm like, no. But see, here's the lesson for you guys. Go first, make an impact, and make an impression. So that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. So yeah, basically I have endured some different situations and some challenges in my role. And one of them also had to do with my age. My sister and myself started our Glam Gal franchise when we were in our I was 30, Josie was like 28, 29. So, dealing with, different people in different positions. A lot of people don't take us very seriously based on our age. Like, you're building a franchise, you're building 6 locations. Like, what? So different things, different little situations occurred. And one of the biggest lessons I learned from these situations is to not sit on it. Do not accept someone talking down to you and sit on it, like sending an email the next day about it or later on at night. You need to set boundaries, and you need to set them right away, and you need to express how you feel on the spot. That's my personal advice, my opinion. Everyone, can say how they deal with different things. But, I was in a situation on a construction site. We were building one of our stores, and one of the general contractors, let's just say, was telling me that I didn't know what an insulated pot light was. Well, he didn't know my background prior to opening Glam Gal locations was I worked for a contractor that was an electrical contractor, right? So instead of me being quiet and taking how he was speaking to me, again, this is just a little situation, I should have said it on the spot and said, actually, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I know what I'm talking about. And this is how it is. And said, and you have no right to talk to me like that. So doing it on the spot and setting your boundaries. I didn't have that confidence at the beginning. I learned it along the way. So I'm giving you guys this advice that, if you don't feel like something is right or someone is speaking down to you, if you feel that, call it out right away. Don't sit on it. And people will respect you more when you address things on the spot rather than sending it in an email. And that's my best advice. Don't sit behind a computer or a text message. If someone in your industry speak to them, even if it's on a Zoom nowadays, right? But call it out right away. I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm sorry. Right? So these are just little challenges. One little example, there's so many more. I tried to reflect, but I feel like these experiences have shaped me, and I'm grateful for them, because I wouldn't be able to speak to you guys about them, and I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for those experiences. So that was just like a little snippet, a little challenge, a very little one, but a little example I wanted to share with you guys.
Thanks so much, Laura. And while we're answering the questions, remember, we can respond to each other if you would like to do so. You are absolutely right that sometimes we feel this person has so much more power over me. What can I say? This person might make my life uncomfortable. But over time, you learn the skills about how to sit in yourself to make sure that you are respected as a person who is a thinking, walking, living, breathing human being. Yes. Thanks, Laura.
You're welcome. Maybe, Michelle, can
sure.
I just jump on that, to your point? I think it's kind of the same thing, but I was going to say one of the biggest challenges for me was finding my voice and getting comfortable with that voice, and realizing that people wanted to hear my opinion and hear my voice. And I was thrust into that situation by the very nature of a role I took on when I went back into politics and worked for the Minister of Finance. And I was sitting around a room full of people who I considered all to be much smarter and brighter than I was, because they worked in the ministry. They were very knowledgeable. They were subject matter experts. And yet, they all turned to me to look for my opinion and my guidance on something. And it was just one of those moments where, you realize you have to step up, and also what you have to say matters. And I think that's something that I continue to try and work with my team now on is often I find younger people on the team are less willing to speak up. And yet we really I want to hear what you have to say. it matters. So I try to go out of my way now to not talk as much and to listen and draw people out without putting them on the spot, but really creating a safe space for people to express their opinion. Just wanted to share.
Thanks, Diane. And Erin?
Similar to what Laura said, I mean, there's so many things I've experienced over the years. It's really hard to distill it down, but I'm really a huge fan of understanding unconscious biases. I'll just quickly run through the three that have affected me and most women in their lives most. Performance bias is, when women are successful, they're told it's because they were lucky in the right place, the right time. When men are, it's because they're naturally talented. And so in many points in my career, I was described in terrible ways because of my ambition. She's elbowing her way to the top. She was in the right place. She's Machiavellian, because there's this assumption that being ambitious is sort of a bad thing. And if you're successful, it's not because you fought for it. There's the likability bias, which is women are expected to be nurturing and caretaking, and men are supposed to be assertive, and they're supposed to be action oriented. And so often, again, in just being convicted, my advice to everyone is to communicate with conviction. It's important all the time, even if you communicate softly. It means that I was often called abrasive, aggressive, all those things. And this is still real. It gets more celebrated as my career evolves, of course, but early on, that's a kind of a tough thing to take. And then the third one that's really important is the maternal bias. I have 3 small kids. Every time I was pregnant, somebody would question, why are you taking a short maternity leave? Well, and every time they asked me that question, it was implying I was a crappy mom, or I was somehow making the wrong prioritization decisions. Women who are mothers are often also assumed to be less ambitious, not asked to take on the international assignments and do these interesting things. But what I will say is the importance of bias is knowing them, recognizing them, and calling them out. And it doesn't actually have to be adversarial. It's really important to start to talk about it. So, hey, so-and-so, it sounds like there's a little bit of bias in what you said. And that made me feel this way. It doesn't mean attacking someone and calling them a sexist and ending the conversation. That's not productive at all, because biases are in all of us. We all do this too. You do this. And so I've learned that I talk about it, try to be aware of it. And if that bias is applied to me, I try not to personalize it and say, well, that's just somebody's bias. I'm not a bad mother. I'm not a bad person. I'm not excessively ambitious. So I have to have that conversation with myself. But we all just regularly need to talk about it because it's in all of us, and this behavior is in all of us. And I think it's the most valuable tool set. Unconscious bias training is free. It's available online. It helps you navigate your life in really powerful ways because it's everywhere.
Erin, I love what you said there. And I love the fact that you put the responsibility for the bias on the person who holds the bias, and has nothing to do with you, but has everything to do about them. And I think back to early in my career, and this is answering the question from my perspective. I used to be a marketing assistant at National Trust, and it was a big deal that I had made it into the marketing department. But they had this rule in the office that all females had to relieve the receptionist at lunchtime. None of the men had to. Apparently you needed a vagina to answer the phone. I didn't quite understand this. So I refused. And this created, unfortunately, not just a mutual resentment from the leaders, who were mostly male at the time. It was also created a resentment with the other women. Like, why isn't she doing it? Does she think she's better than us? And there was this whole divide and conquer attitude between women in the workplace. And I think it was something that they wanted almost for us to feel that way, because it kept us down fighting amongst each other while the leaders of B could keep running the business. So as I look back, I wish I had have handled that differently and offered support and cooperation and compassion, and actually have bonded with these women. And that's what I'm really passionate about now, is I don't want to ever let my sisters down. And I want to be there for other women in business, in the community, in my family. And as Rupi Kaur says, we all move forward when we recognize how resilient and striking the women around us are. So recognize how striking and wonderful the women around you are and support them. So that's my lesson from early days in business.
Thanks so much, Tino. Fantastic. And How about you, Carolyn? What would you like to add to this conversation?
Well, in thinking about challenges and opportunities that I faced earlier in my career, going back to the mid-1980s, as head of human resources, I was the only woman on a management team of about 10 men, senior management team, and a broader team of 40 hotel general managers. And as a matter of fact, I still have a picture of a general managers conference, and there are 3 to 4 rows of men in this picture. And there's me as the only woman sitting in the front row. So what challenge did that present? Was the old boys network. It was definitely a man's world. And you know, I didn't play golf. I didn't smoke cigars, and so oftentimes I felt like the outsider looking in. I didn't have any other females around me to support. So what did I do? I turned that challenge into an opportunity. And in my role, I had an opportunity to shape the culture of our company. And I developed a Women in Leadership group. And while these are very much more prevalent in organizations today, this was back in the late 80s when it was a new initiative. And so I developed a network of women at all levels so that we could have our own network. And we met regularly. We talked about some of the things that Erin talked about in terms of work-life balance and what were some of the challenges that we felt as women. So, you know, and that has certainly continued in the company today. And today, I'm very proud to say that the tables have turned, and the senior management team at Accor is primarily made up of women in many non-traditional roles. The CEO is a very well-respected woman, Heather Mccrory. She too started her career at the Banff Springs Hotel in the laundry room. So she went from the laundry room to the boardroom, as she would say in many of her presentations. The CFO is a woman, again, more non-traditional role, as is the chief legal counsel and the senior vice president of operations. So today, the women are in fact leading the men. And also 43% of the hotel general management, every hotel has a general manager who is head of the business unit and leads it. And we started tracking the number of female general managers. And today that has increased to 43%. And I know Heather has a goal of 50% by the end of this year. So it's so wonderful to see the commitment and the progress that's being made. We made sure that when candidate slates were presented for key management roles, that there were always women on those key slates. So really good to see that kind of progress.
Absolutely, Carolyn, because I think the most important lesson that I'm pulling out here is that it is one thing to wish for change. It's another thing to make the change, to do what we can to sit at the table and make those changes. So thanks for that. And Mimi.
My journey has been a bit different in the sense that I've been self-employed for a long time. My late husband, we traveled a lot and he took a position up in Africa. So whatever career I was doing at the time, which was heading up, being a director of development for a not-for-profit, that all stopped and I started doing things on my own. So in that sense, I haven't had to battle or even notice what's going on really with my sisters in the corporate setting. So that's one difference. And the other difference is perhaps I'm thick, or perhaps I'm just a really positive person. And my nose is to the grind, so to speak. And that's comes from my upbringing, that it was just expected that you'll always work hard. And I work in a very, very committed fashion. So I don't really notice, or maybe it exists, or I'm thick, I don't know. But having nose to the grind and just working hard and being good at what you do, and like Erin suggested earlier, speak with authority and conviction. And that only comes because you've worked very hard at what you do, and that you've acquired the skills and the education that came with it. So in that sense, my experiences are a bit different, upbringing, and also being an Ismaili Muslim. I was raised with this big word that I didn't know how to spell for a long time, which was meritocracy. It was that you just have to work really hard to get where you needed to get. So I think in that sense, my experience has been different. And also the businesses or careers I've chosen tended to be a softer culture, because when you're in the helping profession or in the artistic side, which is what I have switched from one to the other, it's that the customer base or the client base is not the same as hardcore sales that many of you have had to work with and deal with. So I think my journey in that sense is different, and I would extend that opportunity. I hope that others will take those paths, because they're as gratifying and gives you the growth that you get in any other career.
Thanks, Nimi. There are some career paths that seem to open themselves more to women, and this is true. But often we find that these careers are linked to what Erin mentioned earlier, which is this maternal bias, but in a weird sort of way, where women are expected to look after. And if they don't, they're accused of being harsh and unfeminine and all kinds of things. But when you're able to find a work circumstance, as Nimi's describing, that is nurturing, it is such an empowering place in which to be. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So let's move on to our third question. And I have one question that's come in from our participants, and please, those of you who are watching our broadcast today, please feel free to start putting those questions in that chat, because we're going to be turning to our questions next. So our third question for our panelists: what words of advice might you offer to our LA and PS students who are anxious about the future? What might you say to them if they are determined to make an impact in the world? What kind of advice would you offer? And this time I'm going to start with Tina.
Thank you. Well, my words of advice are 4. Put your hand up. Whenever you get opportunity to grow, to lead, to do something different that you haven't done before in your career, put your hand up. And it just so happens that this is the power pose for Choose to Challenge for International Women's Day today. So put your hand up and choose to challenge gender bias and inequality, but also put your hand up to choose to challenge yourself to lead. Because just as love is love is love, a leader is a leader is a leader. And you can be a leader in your family. You can be a leader in your community. You can be a leader at work or school. Yes, CEO or president's great, but you can also lead clubs and groups and committees. You can be a leader in government. You can be a leader in your social circles, because the best things that have happened, I know, in my career and in my life were because I put my hand up. So put your hand up and don't ever put it down. there in the book Lean In, Sheryl Sandberg gave this great story of how she had given a talk to all of the executives at Facebook, and one of her colleagues came into her office and said at the end of the talk, I want to thank you, you really taught me something. And so she kind of puffed up her chest and thought, okay, well, I did really good here. My colleagues happy. This woman has learned something from me. And she said, oh, that's great. What did you learn? She says, I learned never to put my hand down. And she says, well, what do you mean? And she says, well, you were wrapping up your talk and you said, okay, one more question. And she said, and so you took your person that you were going to get, answer their question. And I put my hand down, but all the men in the audience kept their hand up. And you went on and asked and took their questions. So I've learned I'm never putting my hand down again, even if you tell me to put my hand down, that there's no more questions. So hands up, ladies.
Thanks, Tina. Laura.
So I love that, Tina. Hands up. I'm gonna say that to my daughter tonight before she goes to bed. That was so impactful. I loved it. Patience. That is the most important thing I could share with each and every one of you today. I feel like we want things so quick. We want something to happen right away. We think that something is gonna happen overnight. My biggest advice is to be patient. Good things take time, and just as quickly as you build it, it could disappear. So take the time to build it, build yourself, and always lead with patience.
Thanks, Laura. Nimi?
I would say that I think it's really important to find your passion. And that's no easy feat, to find out what you're good at and what generates peace and comfort within yourself. But it's important that you be aware that there is a passion, something in you that makes you happy. And it may not be your career. It may be something that just comforts you and suits you. And I find that having found a passion in my life in the last few years, it has stabilized me. It gives me strength. One of my daughters is a journalist, but she's also a drummer. And she's now in her late 30s. And when she's had a rough day, she goes, hits the drums. And same with me, I'll start doodling. And it's not going to pay her bills to pay the drums. It's the journalism that pays the bills. So I would encourage students to not ignore what their passions are. And in many cultures, we're encouraged to focus on the money and less on the arts, but the arts do help you cope with life. So I hope that students will go into that search, and during times of difficulty, they will find that their passion, their talents certainly help. So that's it.
Thank you, Nimi. And Carolyn.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, Nimi, I couldn't agree more with you in terms of, taking the time to identify where your own individual positive attributes are and where your passion lies. And then once you have channeled your interest, really take the opportunity while you're at York. It's an amazing opportunity to get involved in committees where you can channel your interests, you can try them out, you can see what you love, and then also seek out volunteer opportunities. It's a wonderful chance to develop your skills and see where your passions lie. Whenever I was interviewing candidates for positions, I would always ask them, well, tell me, where does your passion lie? It was our philosophy in our company, and I think it still is today, is we hire for talent. You can always train the technical spots of a position. But if you don't have an innate talent, if I use the hospitality industry, to provide amazing service and service leadership, no amount of training in the world is going to, turn you into that service-oriented individual or leader. So it's so important to understand where your individual talent lies. And that will help you with your authenticity. And that is something that employers are looking for today. They're looking for, what makes your talent and authenticity unique and special for the position or opportunities that are available. And where have you had experience in that area? Perhaps in volunteer work. I volunteer today for Dress for Success, which is all about empowering women who are returning to the workforce. And they have amazing experience that they bring from other countries. And, one piece of advice that we have for them is to land in Canada, try out volunteer opportunities or internships, work with your career center and ask them where internships are available. I can't tell you the number of times that we hired interns that turned into full-time positions. And then one last thing that I want to say is I know it's been a very difficult year for everyone. You haven't been on campus and you haven't been able to have those connections in person with those committees, and which hopefully are still virtual. But what that probably has developed in you is a tremendous amount of resilience. And resilience really means being flexible, moving forward with change. And that's an important skill that employers are looking for today as well.
Can I jump in here? I just, maybe at the risk of being controversial, I had no idea what my talent or passion was in university. No idea. It took years to discover it, right? As I said, I wanted to be a journalist, and I discovered I liked getting things done. I liked communicating in different contexts. And my advice I would give in a pandemic or before the pandemic to all students, I also want to say I didn't get anywhere through nepotism. I had not a single connection at any point in my life. First job was at McDonald's, as I shared with this group in a previous chat. Get in the door anywhere, because that's the great evening mechanism. So one of the biggest things that I see students make a bit of a mistake on today is like, you want that cool job out of the gate, or you want to become an entrepreneur out of the gate. Just go to a strong, well-managed organization that will help you with your next phase of training. Any large organization. It can be Xerox, it could be Microsoft, it could be anything. It could be a financial institution, because they take the next step of the education you require to become a professional. And then when you get there, it's not about who you know, it's not necessarily about a demonstrated skill. It's about how you show up. It's about your passion for just contributing. And if you show people you are passionate to do great work in an organization like that, that's how you get this jungle gym set of opportunities. And you try enough things that allows you to actually find your passion, if you're like me and you had no idea what it was. And so I just really encourage people to not look for the perfect job right now, but look for a job in a well-managed company that will help you learn and grow. And over time, it's not really until I was 40 that I could tell you I wake up every day and I love 98% of my day. Yeah, there's a few percentage points I hate, maybe some administrative stuff, but I generally love what I do, but it took years to figure that out for me. And I'm so glad I just started somewhere, anywhere. Because you may think, I got to tell you, the things I thought I was passionate about at 21, 22 are certainly not what I am now. And so I just think in the pandemic, apply for everything, do a good job with your applications. I saw somebody in the Q&A ask about networking. Don't send a lot of random LinkedIn notes. It doesn't work for me. I get them all day long. What I do like is when somebody says there's a job posted, here's my cover letter, here's why I think I'm great for it. Don't, put yourself all in on the job application process, cast your net really, really wide and start somewhere, anywhere. And that's really my strong point of view on this. And I've seen it work well. And when you arrive, I hire a lot of young people. We just assess you for your capability on the spot, not your education or expertise.
Thanks so much, Erin. And Diane.
Yeah, maybe I can just kind of again build on what everybody said, but Erin, to your point, I think you're right. We don't all know what our passion is, but I think we've all been through a very interesting year, and I think we're seeing huge shifts in society right now, and we know what bothers us, what's making us worried, what's making us mad, where we think maybe we can help make a difference. And, whether it's the care of our most vulnerable people, whether it's how certain jobs are valued and from frontline workers to personal support workers to, like we couldn't survive without these people right now, and do we need to revalue those types of roles and jobs? And I only use those as examples to say, you all have opinions, you all have views about these things. You may have part-time jobs and be frontline workers as you're getting yourself through school, and speak up, get involved, join a political party. I know a lot of students and young people are not as keen to get involved in politics. It got me my start. I grew up in a very political family, not like grassroots, local. They helped to support local politicians. They helped get people nominated. And I just saw how hard people worked in the community. And I saw the difference that you can make by being involved in politics. And I know people get frustrated often by what they see and read in the media, but the fact is you can make a difference, and it's a tremendous springboard, even if it just gets you more involved in your community. So while you may not know what your passion is right now, and that may change later on, you can make a very small difference, and it can get you in the door. It can get you contacts and places to go in the future. So don't pass those opportunities up. Your opinion matters.
Can I jump in just for a second?
Sure.
Thanks for that, Diane. I just remembered that I got my first senior position after working on a political campaign. You end up meeting people, and I hope that young people who are listening will think about those, because you end up meeting people that you wouldn't normally meet. And same applies for any other volunteer work. You have the opportunity to meet some very senior people in a political campaign and in a fundraising campaign. So I would certainly encourage that. I have with my kids and kids in the family. And the other thing quickly I wanted to say was, a very wise person once told me, when I got my very first fundraising job at United Way, I said, oh my God, it pays $33,000 a year. That was just such a, what kind of salary is that? And I was told, just pretend they're paying you to teach you. And that's made a huge difference in my life, because it ended up being my school of fundraising. And they gave me a career. So, like Erin said, go work for a solid outfit. It may not be at the level you think you should be, but you're going to walk out with, a lot of skills. So, thanks.
Thanks, Nimi. Okay, well, thank you all to our leaders for responding to those questions. And now I'm going to turn to the questions that are flowing into our chat, and I'll just take them as they've been posted. So a question here from Andrew. He's saying, as a male leader working in a financial industry led primarily by men, what is the main challenge that each of you has faced in the climb in your current careers, and how could he, as a leader, best support the women on his team to help with their development?
Can I go, please? Oh, putting my hand up.
Go ahead, Tina.
Well, thank you for that amazing question. I think something that we have to touch upon today, being in the pandemic that we're in, is that women are suffering the most in this through more gender-based violence at home. Their homes, so many homes are not safe for women right now. Job loss. Often the first jobs that go are the ones that women are in, as well as they've had to leave the workforce because of the next problem, homeschooling and the domestic load and caring for elders. All of this is resting on so many women. So I think one of the things that just understanding that and being compassionate for that and supporting women in those roles and not letting them be the first ones to be let go and saying, what can we do to work with you and support you in these challenges? That would be amazing. So that's my piece.
Thanks, Tina. Anybody else want to take a shot at that one? Or
I just want to build on what Tina said. There are millions of women right now who are considering leaving the workforce because of the pandemic. If all who are considering to leave the workforce leave, we will be 6 years behind where we are today. It's about recognizing people feel so imperfect right now. We feel like failures as mothers, failures as colleagues, because we can't do 100% of anything right now. I mean, we never can, but we certainly can't right now. And as Tina says, it's about having the conversation with the women you work with, recognizing their challenges and barriers are different than yours. Talk about that and give them space to share what they're dealing with and give them the accommodations they require to be successful, in light of the fact that they're 3 times more likely to be taking on all of the household pandemic crap than men. And so I just think it's really, really important to be cognizant of the journey the women are on right now, and be there to listen and make the very firm accommodations and space they need to be successful, because what we don't want is to repel them from the workforce altogether. That moves us all backwards. And then in a non-pandemic world for men, be an ally, call out unconscious biases, talk about, give space for women, step back so they can shine. I mean, it's a lot of very intentional decisions you have to make, and wake up every day recognizing that you don't face the same barriers they do. So what kind of special steps up do you give them?
thanks for that, Erin. There was a discussion this morning on the radio that was talking about the ways in which this pandemic has affected women as workers in particular. And they're calling it the she session, is it? Because it's a female recession. It's affecting women at a much higher rate than it is affecting men. And the expert who was talking was making the point that until women are successfully supported to going back into the workforce, the recession will not be over. So this is an important point. I'd just like to take two comments from Sabina. I'm going to combine them, Sabina, if you don't mind. She asks, what is the best way to be confident? How do you come out of your comfort zone when you get opportunities and want to grow?
I'll jump in and just give an example of a situation that I faced and how I handled it, and building confidence. We had a management meeting. This was when it was still all men, and I was the last presenter for this meeting, and then directly after the meeting was a golf game. We were at a resort, and I had worked very hard on my presentation. It was a key initiative moving forward. So I began my presentation, and as soon as I began, all the men started closing their books and shuffling their papers, and they were paying absolutely no attention to me. So with that, I stopped the presentation like 5 minutes in, and I said, it's clear that you are not paying attention to my presentation, and therefore I am stopping it. We are not going to proceed. Well, with that, they just all kind of, went like this, and they said, oh, we're sorry, and you have our full attention now. And I proceeded. So the feedback that I got after that from some of the most senior men were, that was absolutely the right thing to do. It showed confidence, and, you know, from that day forward, I mean, I always felt respected, but the level of respect, you know, just escalated from that. So again, that's almost like putting your hand up, having the confidence to take a stand and have a voice and speak it, and know that when you do that, you can change the dialogue.
Maybe I can just add into that as well. I think, you know, in particular, and Carolyn, you probably did this in this case, is you practiced and prepared for that presentation. And it's something that I always advocate for, is practice, 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 prepare, prepare, prepare. Whenever you're in front of people, whenever you want to have an important conversation, and think about what are the 3 things you want to get across. We often try to get across all kinds of things, and yet people really only can hear so many things at a time. So what are the 3 things you want to get across? But just a quick story that kind of builds, Carolyn, on what you talked about. And it was when I was working at Infrastructure Ontario, which is a Crown corporation that helped get infrastructure projects out of the ground. And I was a bit out of my depth to start with. I came into that role as a communications advisor because of my background and skill set. And I was asked to take over and lead a technology team. So I felt very much out of my depth at the time. And I went to an event with the CEO and I gave the presentation, and it was with a group of outside stakeholders. And he pulled me aside after and he said, "You did a great job, but you kept looking up at me as if you were looking for acknowledgement that I'd said the right thing or done the right thing." And he said, "Don't do that." He said, "I brought you here because I have confidence in you and I know you'll do the job. You don't need my approval." And it was just one of those kind of defining moments for me that made me think about, how do I conduct myself? What is my body language? And how can I make sure that I'm not always kind of seeking that approval openly?
I think mentorship is something that we haven't discussed yet. And I think for young people, I would certainly suggest that. And without, I mean, what Diane said, I fully agree that we tend to always look for validation and approval. But perhaps for a younger person, performance reviews are a good time to ask more direct questions about your own performance and take, you know, and make note mentally of what that means to you. And I think down the road, it's smart to ask for a mentor, because I think a mentor can guide you and point out to you all your strengths, because sometimes we have difficulty believing in our strengths and the value of our strengths. And it's good for somebody else at earlier stages in our careers to tell us, hey, what you're doing, what you've achieved is really an incredible thing that you've done. And then etch it, memorize it so that you can use it going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to jump in just quick. I'd also just like to add that I remember early in my career, I was asked to do a presentation in front of 400 fishermen. And I had to go to the front of the auditorium and open up this film we were showing. And I thought, oh my gosh, what do I just was, as they were piling into the auditorium, I looked, I said, oh my goodness, I was like all of, you know, a tiny little thing walking on the stage. What am I going to say? How can I command their attention? And I just went, well, I'm just going to pretend to be the person that could do that. So it was almost like a fake it to make it type attitude, that instead of being the change in the world, I was the change in myself. I became who I thought I should be in that moment. And so until you can actually feel all of that confidence, act it, fake it to make it a little bit. Sometimes that helps.
Thanks so much, Tina. Laura.
Yes, I wanted to talk a little bit more about, you know, some ways to build your confidence that worked for me. Again, it didn't happen overnight, and I still feel there's situations that I could be in where my confidence is not as high as I'd like to see it. But it takes experience, it takes situations to build your confidence. And another thing is the people you surround yourself with, right? So you really have to look at your circle of people that you hang around, that you talk to, that you're, you know, things you take in from different, you know, social media accounts too. All of this has an impact on who you are and your level of confidence. So being around people that are helping build you up, that are, you know, confiding in you, looking for your advice, and vice versa, that you're getting constructive criticism from, really help build your confidence. So that is one little thing I'd like to share, is like really look and zone in on your circle of people. And, you know, I rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. So always think about that too when you're looking at your circle.
Okay. So Laura, can I take that one? 4 quarters rather than 100 pennies. Thank you
Yes,
so much.
take it.
That was great.
No, but it's not mine. I've heard it somewhere. I just don't know where, but I have heard it. I can't take credit for it.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask another question that Nikki has asked, which should get the wheels turning. Who inspired you and why? Anybody want to take a jump at that one? Diane, thank
you. Sure. You know, my mom inspired me and my dad, both of them. But my mom, she was born in India, and she came to Canada when she was 14 on her own. Her parents stayed in India, and you know, I think her own struggles, her own growth, and pathway just inspired me again to, you know, be resilient, that you may not experience success right away, but you can figure out a way around things. Kind of comes back to the nonlinear piece. And then one other person I will call out, who I think he may still be the Chancellor of York, or recently, is Greg Cervera. And I had the opportunity to work for Greg when he was the Minister of Finance in Ontario. And he was just, why I single him out is he was always somebody that listened intently to whoever was around him. He always had confidence and instilled confidence in people around him. And he always had an attitude of, we've got this all figured out. And I think ever since I have had the opportunity to work with him, and it really inspired me to think differently, and to, in particular, listen and value the opinions around the table.
Thanks for that, Diane. I'm not seeing any other takers on that one, so that's fine. I have many more questions for you. So let me ask one that is really interesting. Coming from Tia, how do we build a more inclusive environment that encourages and accepts more Black, Indigenous, and people of color women, LGBTQ2+ members, and women with disabilities as leaders? So how do we be more inclusive to groups that have often found it difficult to get into careers and into leadership?
I can maybe take that. I think it's about being highly intentional about it. You know, in tech, we talk a lot about this. It's a huge priority of ours. In Canada, I had the opportunity to build Pinterest Canada from scratch, which meant I could build a diverse team from the get-go versus trying to create one after the fact. I mean, it starts with everybody in the organization understanding that diversity is good for business and absolutely critical to the success of any entity or organization. But then it goes well beyond broad strategies like, hey, we want to have a diverse slate when we hire people. I always say we will hire underrepresented people, period, at all costs. And what it's actually going to take is doing that. You know, not just the intentions to do it, but actually doing it. And so, you know, my call to action for anyone that's hiring people in any industry, just do it. Don't talk about it. Elevate more women, elevate more underrepresented people, and change how you hire. If you look at the research today, women are failing at, they call it the broken rung. So women are not even becoming managers to begin with, let alone underrepresented women. And so we all have a responsibility to just change that composition, and we have to just do it.
Absolutely agree with you, Erin. And I also think as consumers, we have a responsibility to choose to challenge any organization that is not inclusive, and vote with our pocketbooks, vote with our wallets, say, you know what, I look at your, lack of diversity and whatnot, and I'm not interested in spending my money with you anymore. So look for organizations that are inclusive and support them and applaud them. And believe me, they'll follow where the money goes. And if the money is going, they will also change their ways.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks, Tina. Great responses. Thank you so much. And now I have a question here that Nikki's asking specifically to Tina. It says, "Hi, Tina. I love your statement about women sticking together and strongly agree with you. Do you have any advice or tips for women who are manipulated into turning against each other? And what would you do differently if you could go back to that time?" You kind of answered that, but it's an opportunity. It's for Tina, but anybody can answer.
Yeah, please do. Sisters, help me out here. Well, I believe that, what a great question. Thank you for asking. And I appreciate your sentiments and your comments, because we need to band together and support each other. It's critical. I believe that, well, one of Rupi Kaur's poems, she was once complimented by a man, and he said to her, and I'll paraphrase, geez, I can talk to you. You're not like other women. And at a time in my life and other women's lives, we would go, oh yeah, because I'm assertive, I'm intelligent, I'm all these things. I'm more like a man, and that's why, what are we saying? And she responded and went, oh my goodness, how dare you think you insult me? How dare you insult my sisters? How dare you think that I think of myself as better than my sisters because I'm not like them? So I think recognizing the little insidious, little things that we say, the little compliments that we get, that they're not compliments, they're about dividing us. So recognizing it, choosing to challenge it and call it out is number one. And number two, if I could go back to when I started at National Trust, I probably would have organized all of the women who had to go and relieve the receptionist and organize the receptionist and band together and go to management and say, this isn't fair. We have to come up with another way to do this. We shouldn't just judge because a woman has a vagina that she should answer the phone, that we believe that it should be based on some other sort of measurement as to how, and maybe we should hire in a temp that will do that or something. So I would have banded the women together and we would have been so much stronger. So I think unity is the answer, and belonging to groups like Zonta, like Mccrory, like other women's organizations that recognize that will give you strength and knowledge and know-how of how to deal with that. So joining organizations and volunteer groups or committees in that manner would be great too. So thank you so much, and fight on.
Okay, let me go on to another question, which takes us back to something we've discussed earlier, which has to do with passion. So this question is coming from Jenna, and Jenna is asking, what if you follow your passion and you are set back? How do you stay on your path while being realistic about when to shift? Is there a time to start over and redefine yourself? So when do you know when to start? Thank you so much, Laura.
So COVID has taught our brand more than anything. Our locations is where we host kids' birthday parties. So we had to close all of our locations down and switch every birthday party to a virtual birthday party for kids. It was deflating. It wasn't in our business plan. But we pivoted and we made do. But your question goes back to, when do you know that it's no longer your passion? I'm just sorry, it was a multifaceted question, right? Is that what she asked there? When it's not working anymore?
When it's not working, how to redefine.
Yeah, so if you're talking about, a business, because I'm thinking that could be what she's talking about, I think you need to have a really good accountant to look at your financials as well, to say, listen, you're continuously at a loss. You've got to either change things up or you've got to go into a completely different direction. If you no longer have that passion in your heart for what you're doing, that's your sign right there that you know what, it's time to shift. And it's okay to shift. Just because, you know, you've had this, you've built this, and this is this is what you know and want to do. Don't think that it's going to be like that forever. Sometimes churning a path and going in a different route or a different road leads you to your next destination. And who's to say it's not even better than the last one? So I find that you should lead with your heart, but also get some really good financial advice if it's a business from an accountant. And that's my best piece of advice for you guys, because COVID was not in anyone's plan, and a lot of people have shifted because of it. So I hope that helps, the advice.
I just want to jump in and share a quick story with you. And, you know, I always like to ask people the question, well, you know, tell me about yourself. How did you get started in your career? And at one event, I met a woman who was catering the event. She was a chef. She was very passionate. And she said, well, actually, I started my career in investment banking. And I had my degree in finance, but I realized that that wasn't my passion. My passion was cooking. And so I had the strength and the courage to leave my career behind and get some formal training in cooking. And there she was now, very successful. And she shifted and followed her passion. Probably not the easiest thing to do. It takes a lot of courage. But I think in the end, when you think about your career journey, it's lifelong. And so there are times that it's okay to make that shift, because you still have a long road ahead.
I love what you said, Carolyn. And I think that because my business at the age of 60 when I started was passion driven. And the one thing I would say to young people is those who actually get paid for their passion are extremely lucky people, and there are not too many of those. So sometimes your passion, as in my case, it's more about what holds you together, what strengthens you. So maybe one thing to do with your passion is to use it as a secondary career, as a second line of what you do, so that primarily what you're doing, which is paying the bills, is maybe a bit different from if you're an artist or if you're a musician, if that's the kind of passion that you're referring to, that your passion does not have to be the only thing. You can have other things in life to make a career out of, but your passion is your secret power.
Can I just jump in? I do think, though, as much as you can, you have to love what you do. It has to get you out of bed in the morning. And if you're not, you know, if you're not finding that, you have to continue to look for it somewhere else, because a job can be a job. It can get you from point A to B. It can fund your school. It can, you know, get you through a tough period. But, you know, if you're going to grow in that role, you have to love what you do. And I think, you know, look for areas where you might not find it. People say, how did you go from politics into banking? I found a cause in banking, and people may disagree with me for that. But to me, fundamentally, it was about ensuring that keeping people's money safe and fueling the economy by lending. And I saw a cause in that, and I saw a way I could be involved there. And that got me out of bed every day. And same with where I am now in insurance. It's ultimately about helping people in their time of need. So I think sometimes you have to reframe how you think about certain roles, certain industries, whether it's for-profit, non-profit, whether it's entrepreneurial. You know, open your mind to what the possibilities can be.
Yeah, Diane, I just want to jump in on what you said about you have to love what you do. And it reminds me of one of my favorite expressions, and that is, you know, find a job you love and you'll never have to work again. I'm sure that's one that you're all familiar with. I was very fortunate. I loved what I did from the time I was 16 years old in the hotel industry, and unlike many, I spent 40 years in one company. It kept growing and buying other hotels. So I kept growing along with it. But yeah, there's a lot to be said for loving what you do and trying to channel your passion into that area.
Thanks, Carolyn. And I'm going to ask us one last question as we wrap this fantastic session, bring it to a close. And it comes from Kylie. She says, sometimes I doubt my education being enough, despite having a BA and a college diploma. Do you have imposter syndrome? And if you do, how do you handle this?
I would maybe just jump in. Education is education. It's a baseline. Obviously, we all share. That's why we're all here today. The thing that you need more than anything else is hard work and preparedness. And, you know, I wanted to build on that, Carolyn. I love that story you told, by the way, about the presentation. And you were confident in doing that because you knew your content was great. At the end of the day, whether you're a man or a woman, you have to be more prepared. You have to be capable. And when somebody asked, who are we inspired by? I don't have a single person. I'm inspired by highly prepared, highly capable people. And I would just say that, like, you should never feel like nobody's education is enough. It's all about applied experience, working hard and applying a lot of energy to it, whether you love it or not. You probably won't love that first job. I mean, Carolyn, you're lucky. I'm envious. I still don't love all of what I do, but I put all of myself into it regardless, because that's when I get the most rewards from the whole process. And so imposter syndrome is real for everybody. Your inner voice is a jerk. Shut it down. And know that the one thing to build your confidence you can do is just work hard, be prepared. Nothing's going to come from doing anything less than really great, really hard work, male or female.
I agree with you, Erin, and I could build on that because Sheryl Sandberg said, who you know well, in her book, that in Lean In, that so it seems to be imposter syndrome is very much, it's across the board, across genders. However, it is something that women seem to have a little bit more of than men. And that if she was going to go to a man and say, I'm thinking of you for this position, how do you feel about that? The man would say, yep, sign me up. Where do I start? Where's my new desk? Where's my new office? I'm ready to go. Women would sit back and they go, well, I'm not sure that maybe I have quite the qualifications for that. Or maybe I should stay where I am for another year. And we have to stop doing that. We have to put up our hands and say, yep, sure, I'll do it. And then figure it out. You're smart enough to be where you are. You're qualified enough to be where you are. You have the brains to figure it out and be prepared for that next position. So the imposter syndrome is something that we should be aware of and then put it aside and say, thanks for sharing. I know I got this.
I agree so much with both Tina and Erin. Nose to the grind. There's no substitute for hard work. And like you said, Erin, male or female, or Tina, male or female, you just have to really be good at what you're doing. And your inner voice is a jerk, but the more good experiences you have, you learn to build on those. Trust yourself on building on those, but do work very, very hard. There's no substitute for that.
Thank you so much, Nimi, Tina, Erin. Thank you to our panelists, Carolyn, Diane, Laura. Thank you so much. We're coming to the end of our time together. It's amazing how quickly the time went by. Thanks to those who joined us for today's event. And thanks so much for those who put questions in the chat. I'd just like to invite you to visit us with us again on the 25th of March for the next in the Moving Forward series with Melissa Grello, co-host of CTV's The Social. You can find the registration link in the chat. If you go now to the chat, it's right there. Thank you so much once again, everyone. Thanks to LANPS. Thanks to our dean. Thanks to Divya and Munib for the behind the scenes work. Thank you so much, everyone.